given moment, we have two options: step forwards into growth or step back into safety. Dare to succeed and share a moment with us in the moment.
Leicester Chop. Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Moment with Vicky and Alice. I think we're on about episode 7.
That's mental.
I love how you put your monster up. Is your monster like your thing for the podcast?
It must be.
Podcast
White today. I ran out of my Fiesta ones and Ross buys like the box of 8, I think. Is it 8? Do you know, like the big one?
Yeah.
So I was like, can I have one of yours, please? So I need to go and do a monster run later.
Is the ones you normally have the blue ones then?
Yeah, the Fiesta ones. It's the ultra ones are the ones that have like no sugar and are like 10 calories. Have you tried the 3D ones?
I don't drink energy drinks really at all.
Not.
No.
So I'm gonna try a 3D one. I was talking to a supplement brand this morning, so I need to place an order. And they had the 3D ones, and I was like, never tried them before. But apparently they taste like the flavor is a lot nicer than the Monster. So
I mean, 3D to me is where you put them glasses on and you sit in the cinema and you're the experience. Unless they're going to put me on a roller coaster and make me feel like I was there, I'm just not interested.
Okay.
Or if they advertise like someone in Spain on a beach holding it, then I want to be in Spain on a beach holding it. Like that's what the immersive experience is.
It would just be nice to be abroad, wouldn't it?
Oh God, yeah, it's so cold.
So nice.
So how was your week then?
Right, what day are we on? Friday. Feels really weird because we normally record on a Sunday, but at the moment it's been a bit like we'll just record when we can. So Friday. So we were in Aberdeen last weekend.
Yeah.
We went over to Dundee to see. We stayed at Ross's coach's house, just because he is competing next weekend. So
oh my God, that's gone so quick, hasn't it?
I know. His coach is doing the same one as well, like the same show. So we went down so he could see Ross in person, because actually seeing people in person is like way different to like actually seeing like photos and stuff. So stayed with him, and then we went over to Aberdeen on the Sunday to see my coach, Ross, and we went to Warehouse Gym. I don't know if you've heard of that gym. No, it's incredible, amazing. So Ross and Ali got a session in. I met Erin. We got a session in, did some posing. It's really weird though, because Ross was like, "Are you excited to meet her?" And I was like, "Well, I feel like I already know her. Like, I feel like I've known her for years."
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a little bit excited, and I was a little bit like nervous, I guess.
There's that fear as well that if the person that you've built up for her to be isn't actually the person you meet when you see her. Do you know what I mean?
It wasn't even that. It was me. I was like, oh my God, what if she like looks at me and think, oh yeah, like Alice actually needs longer, or like she looks better in her photos or her videos. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't anything
swinging in person.
It was literally just me. But no, she came in like, bearing in mind Erin is like probably 5'1", 5'2", I think, maybe 5'1". So I stood up and she was like, "Oh my God, I did not expect you to be so small." I was like, "Yes, Erin, yes, I am 4'11".
She's probably not many people shorter than her, is she?
I was like, I do tell people I'm 5 foot just cause it sounds a bit better, doesn't it? But yeah, then we just had a really good session, and we were talking about like plans for next year for competing, which is so exciting. And then we did some posing and stuff at the end, and she gave me some like just little pointers. Like, I've never had any posing sessions. Like, everything I've done is self-taught. I think just because when it comes down to posing, it is so personal, and like like with Ross, he was going to somebody in the industry for posing, but it was like he was trying to teach Ross to pose like him, but his structure was completely different to Ross's. So, you know, it's not always the best thing to do. When you are teaching somebody to pose, you need to look at their body composition, look at their proportions, and find a pose that really, really accentuates what they've got. Because the last thing you want to do is put them in a pose that potentially opens them up, so it makes the, you know, midsection look massive. Because posing is all about creating illusions, like, and that's why when I've started posting my check-in photos, I always try and put a relaxed photo in as well, just so you can see you know, the realism of how I'm looking, and it's not necessarily just with my posing, because like even when I look at my posing, like my posed check-in photos, I'm like, fucking hell, I look jacked. But then when I look at my normal relaxed, I'm like, oh, and it's really weird. And I think you'll find this really interesting. I feel very vulnerable in my relaxed photos.
Okay.
Like, very vulnerable. I look at them and I'm like, oh, I hate them.
Vulnerable in terms of judgment from others then?
No, just me. Because I look at it and I'm like, I hate that.
So
But then when I look at the posed ones, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy. It's weird.
what's vulnerability then?
Well, obviously I have to send it over to Erin, don't I?
Oh, so it would become down to a fear of judgment then, that Erin would say that your physique isn't good enough.
Is it?
Well, that's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying, in terms of if you
I don't
feel
know.
like when you're posed, you're really secure and confident, and actually when you're not posed, that you feel almost worried, and that worry comes, and that'd be your expectation is so high of what you want for yourself. And no, that comes into perfectionism and all these different traits.
I knew it. I knew you would love that.
Perfectionism, but the fact that it's not necessarily what you're seeing. I don't always like think from our conversations that it's necessarily what you see you dislike that much, but it's the fact that you have to then send that to somebody else. A bit like you said about Erin meeting her, and what if I'm not the same as I look in person as
Yeah.
a picture? So it's the fear of judgment of you not meeting somebody else's expectations because you don't meet your own because they're stupidly high.
Yeah, they are. Like, I so the brand, you know, Glutewear.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of their things, and I won a competition of theirs like maybe a couple of years ago, and they sent me some free stuff. And you know, like Carly Thornton, like I follow her and she is so inspiring to listen to. She's probably like the only person that I actually watch like motivational speeches and stuff like that. And she had said about applying for their like athlete program. So I did that like a couple of weeks ago. And I got an email back yesterday to say that I needed to send some more things off via email. So I was doing that this morning, and it was literally a case of, why do you want to work for us and what can you bring? And I was just sat there like, and I actually wrote down, like, I do find it really difficult to kind of like sell myself and acknowledge what I bring to the table. But I do think the more and more I progress as an individual and as an athlete, the more I learn, the more confidence I'm getting. I think it is becoming more comfortable to talk about what I'm good at and like my attributes. Is attributes the right word?
Yeah.
So one of them, like, because so many people say to me, oh, you're such a perfectionist. And I really am. And I put that in my email this morning. I was like, some may say that I'm a perfectionist, and, you know, in hindsight, I probably am, because I just like things done a certain way, and it has to be like, in my eyes, perfect. And like you say, like my expectations are probably unrealistic sometimes.
Do you
But I guess
view your perfectionist attitude as a positive attribute or a negative attribute?
I think it can be both, because I think sometimes it can be detrimental, because it means sometimes I spend more time on something that probably doesn't need that amount of time. So it's almost like that, is it work smarter?
Yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. So yeah, I struggle with that a little bit, I guess.
I mean, this, to be fair, was a great segue into, we were actually going to talk today around your prep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great segue into it.
Yeah. Have you ever been segwaying?
That wasn't the term segue in this context, but no, I haven't been segueing because
Great. It's fantastic.
I've always been too fat. I've always been too heavy.
Have you?
Always. And it's something that I'd love to do, but the way, that's what I mean about life, in that being bigger, and people say, oh, you can't be happy when you're bigger. I don't believe that. I think people can carry excess weight and still be happy, or experience happiness in a similar way. What I can't experience is life. And I want to experience life. That's, that's what comes down to. But yeah, we were going to talk today around your prep, and you touched on it a bit. There's like a few questions that go around my head now. So
Okay.
I want to try and go right back though to what it was that made you want to step into the bodybuilding industry.
So I'm just going to add, I'm somebody that kind of goes off on a tangent. So if I need pulling back, if I need reining back, just let me know. Just be like, Alice, get to the point.
We call it rabbit holes. People go down rabbit holes in meetings. You have a rabbit hole watcher, like, bitch, please, back to the topic. So
yeah. So I guess it all stems from like primary school. So playing football, being in a competitive sport. And I think having that drilled into me through my dad, because my dad was always a very like competitive person. He was a boxer, so it's something that's been kind of like, yeah. My granddad, my dad's dad used to run like multiple football clubs down in Plymouth. So sport has always been like in the family anyway. And I think my dad always I reckon he wished I was born a boy. Okay, we're going off on a complete tangent here, but like growing up, it was like I was basically like a proper tomboy. So like sport, it was always drilled into me, like fishing and things like that. I did a lot of that. So played football until I was like 16, 17. Played like amateur for probably I was like 15, because I played for Lincoln Ladies. I played for Lincoln City for like 3 years. But whilst I was playing for Lincoln, I was also playing for the academy school at school. It's like a federation. And then I was playing for Welton. But I was playing for like my age and then the year above. So football, it was like my week was just competitive. It was like all the time. And then it got to like when I was like 17, it was then that crossover of, right, okay, if you're continuing with football, you would have to go into like the ladies league, like the older women. And for me at that point, I was like, nah, I can't do that. So I stopped playing football. And then I started going to Yarborough, the gym, the leisure centre, and I started just doing like classes, like body pump.
Yeah.
That. And my my friend from secondary school, she was into bodybuilding, and but she was going to DW at the time. And we would meet up and go on like nights out and stuff, and I'd look at her and I think, fucking hell, like she looks amazing. So that kind of spurred me on to go to the gym and like lift weights and things like that. So did that for a few years, and then my ex at the time was like, oh, like, what are your thoughts around CrossFit? And at the time I was a bit like, not sure. Aren't they just a bunch of like idiots that run around doing like shit basically. And I was like, oh, do you know what, let's give it a go kind of thing. So we joined in the January 2017, and then I was there for probably like 3 years. But CrossFit is such a competitive sport. Like, you are literally working out with everybody around you, and it's almost like you're racing to do better than the person next to you. So then it got to a point where it was like CrossFit was my life, and I didn't really have any friends outside of that sport. And we would go away and do competitions and compete and stuff like that, and it was just the buzz of it was just incredible. And I think as like, and I wasn't even like a top CrossFit athlete either. I think if anything, I was just going through that stage in my life where I was like going out quite a lot. But I had like throughout the week, I had my CrossFit, and then I would go out at the weekend. So I wasn't like completely serious about putting in all of the hard work, like for what it actually takes to be a top CrossFit athlete. Anyway, I guess that kind of lit the spark with like actually being competitive in a sport again. And then it wasn't until I actually moved up here with Ross in 2020. Yeah, 2020. And I was like, there's no CrossFit up here. What am I going to do? So I thought, well, who is it? Somebody said to me like a couple of years ago about being a bodybuilder. And I was like, I'm not sure. Like, in all honesty, I didn't think I had it in me. I was like, nah, there's no way I could do that. And there was actually a couple of girls at the CrossFit gym at the time that were ex-bodybuild, like, well, I say bodybuilders, like bikini girls. And they was like, oh, bodybuilding gave me eating disorders, this and that, you know, it's not healthy and I would never do it again. You know, with CrossFit, I can go to the gym and I can go home and eat what I want kind of thing. Like, that's not a healthy relationship anyway. Again, that's a different tangent, that's a different story. So I guess always had that negative, I don't know. Like, I guess when you're listening to certain people that have been in the industry and you're like, oh God, that sounds awful. But that's just one channel. That's only like one opinion. But yeah, so I guess once I moved up here, I was like, right, what am I going to do? Because I need something, because I am that competitive person. Like, I needed something to push me physically and mentally. Because I'm not one of these people that can just like stand still. And I think like we've had that conversation before. But yeah, so did a bit of research into the sport and what it is actually really about, because yeah, people say, oh yeah, you look great, you know, you get tan and you stand on stage in bikini and everything is fantastic, but that's not what it's about for me. It's the actual sport. It's the actual challenge of pushing yourself every single day, having structure, having routine, and just always having something to strive for every single day. And I think if anything, it's just like pushing me to places that, you know, I never thought I could do. And I think once you actually do that, once you step out of your comfort zone and actually push yourself to certain limits, it actually then makes you realize I'm capable of like so much more. And then it also bleeds into other aspects of your life.
Yeah, I
So
definitely think that. I think once you apply that sort of discipline and consistency to one area of your life, you can start to sort of mimic that in other areas and aspects of your life.
yeah,
And I think actually having that ability to sort of transfer those skills to other areas is really important in order to maintain balance, because
yeah,
you can get so honed in on bodybuilding and that world and that lifestyle that you lose balance and perspective of
real life.
real life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do think it's difficult. I guess one thing I wanted to touch on, this would be very, very vulnerable answer, so I appreciate, you know, if you don't want to answer.
Okay.
Is that if you're a competitive person, and I find this about bodybuilding and sort of my perceptions,
I think I know what you're going to ask.
What point will your physique be enough?
So the thing is with bodybuilding, and some people, and like when I say bodybuilding, like you can live a bodybuilding lifestyle and not compete. Like you can absolutely do that. I think it
By
literally,
bodybuilding lifestyle, just for people that don't know, that's breaking it down that you have periods of increasing muscle by upping calories and then periods of decreasing in order to shed the fat to show the muscle. Is that what you're referring to as a lifestyle?
well, yeah, essentially, but then you could say that to like any lifestyle client, really. I guess what I'm trying to say is that for to live like the bodybuilding lifestyle without the actual competing, yes, you would go through periods of time where you would go into like a gaining phase where calories are slightly increased in order for you to grow. You then hit a certain point where it's like, right, okay, it would actually be optimal now to just pull back on calories, increase output to reduce that excess like visceral body fat. Because when you are carrying too much body fat, it's not like muscle growth isn't as optimal. And it's obviously not healthy to be consistently in a surplus for a very long period of time. So it is all about just like managing that. But like it can come down to like even just your meals, like meal planning and going out and doing steps every day, training however many times a week, and even just like your training split. It'd be like hypertrophy training, whereas like a bodybuilding lifestyle wouldn't include going in to do like CrossFit training. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, there's parts in that I question, I guess, from what the difference is between someone that yo-yo diets and someone that bodybuilds lifestyle. Then
What would you call a yo-yo diet?
someone that puts weight on, then loses the weight, and then puts weight on. Typical, that could be someone that puts like 3 stone on in a year, and then next year they lose the 3 stone, then the following year they put the 3 stone back on. Many people in their life yo-yo diet in a similar way to a lot of males get puppy fat over sort of like the Christmas period, like towards the end of the year, end of summer, towards the end of the year of Christmas, and then in January they'll go on a shed because they want to have the 6-pack look for the summer, and then they'll go back eating the puppy fat. So what would be, is that a healthy lifestyle?
Well, it's person dependent. Like if somebody wants to live their life like that, and if they're happy doing that, then absolutely crack on.
I guess it's the bit that as society, like yo-yo dieting is like an absolute no-no. To put your body through up, down, up, down, up, down, like that's not healthy or sustainable way of living.
I think what would
But
something I would question.
it seems like it's sustainable for people that have a physique, but it's not sustainable for the average Joe. Do you see what I mean? Why the thresholds are confusing? And the difference is how bodybuilders live that lifestyle is through nutritionally valuable food. They go in a surplus with like things that are good for their body that fuel them. Yes, no one's saying that they don't eat things necessarily that are less, calorie or less like nutritionally valuable, but the vast majority of their diet will be stuff that is adequately fueling their body in order to build that muscle, to gain the weight, to do that gaining phase efficiently. Whereas people that yo-yo diet often eat junk food and things that actually aren't fueling their body. So that for me is the difference between a yo-yo diet and a bodybuilding lifestyle.
Yeah, so the yo-yoing, like I was going to say, like what I would question is like, is their current setup sustainable? No, because they're then doing it for, and this is why like we have the conversations about these 8-week challenges. Like you are restricting yourself for like 8 weeks, and it's a really, really, I want to say a short period of time. And it's not sustainable. So yeah, you can do that, but then you're then just going to go back to your old ways.
No, I
Sustainable, it's gonna recruit like psychological issues, hormone issues, especially like for females. And that is going to trigger like hunger signaling. It's going to make you want to binge. You're going to feel like shit. It's not sustainable. And like when it comes to like you would talk about in the bodybuilding, like your surplus. So like when you do go into a phase where you are trying to grow a little bit, it's not a case of, oh, let's race to see how many calories we can eat. It literally is in very, very, well, it should be in very, very small increments. And you assess
Science of the
biofeedback.
body, isn't it? It's like a science. There's like science behind how
Yeah,
this is all done and how the body works optimally. It's not just thrown around calories and numbers.
it's not a case of, right, we're in a gaining phase, let's up your food every other week. Like, it's sorry, it's just gone really, really laggy then.
Yeah, mine did as well. It's okay. We're back.
It's still lagging. Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah. So what I was going to say as well, like in the bodybuilding, it's not a case of, yeah, let's up your food every single week or every other week. Like, that's not how it's done. It's literally a case of assessing biofeedback and then making judgments on that. And then you can even argue, like, for females, when it comes to like late luteal, because our BMR rises during that period, which means that our body naturally burns more energy, and that is why we do get the cravings, and we do get that want, that extra like want to binge and eat around our menses. So, you know, females should be given more food around that time. And then once menses is gone, you know, it's a case of, right, drop food back down, because the energy requirement just, well, the additional energy requirement isn't there. But like, you could also argue as well, in the bodybuilding world, we get regular blood tests. Do lifestyle people do that?
No.
So people say, oh yeah, bodybuilders are unhealthy, this and that. And you can actually argue that we are probably more on our health than your average, what do you call it, average Joe?
Average Joe, yeah. Average Bob, average Joe.
So like, we know exactly, you know, getting your bloods done like every few months, just to keep on top of like hormone health and everything like that. You know, it's really, really important.
And if we like loop back around then about your vulnerability and your nature of perfectionism and competitiveness, that
Yes.
what would be enough for you in the bodybuilding world?
Nothing. And that's what I love about it, because there is no like end. It's just,
As a perfectionist person, that would mean that there's some sort of criteria that you've set for yourself to achieve in order to be perfection. So what does that criteria look like?
well, obviously I have goals. I've got things I want to work to. And when I say things, it's called like a status, a reward to a certain degree. But I know by saying that, you're going to think, oh, are you just doing it for the status, or are you just doing it for
I
that?
don't think that's the same as people that strive to be, you know, the world's strongest man. Are they doing it for the status, or are they doing it because they want to be world's strongest man? Well, whatever the motivation is, that's, you know, I don't believe you're in this because you want to be like, okay, so for example, for me, I keep looking at doing PhDs. Now, there is an element of me that thinks it'd be fucking awesome to be called Dr. Vicky. Like,
Yeah.
and there is that like little
Why
bit,
not?
but
You know,
actually
why not?
I really value learning, and I'm finding it difficult in employment to not have that need for learning and growth being fulfilled that I would get in a similar way to a PhD. So that's my motivation to doing it. It doesn't mean that I also can't think, oh, that'd be cool to have like Dr. Vicky. In a similar way, the bodybuilding, that you appreciate what the discipline, consistency, and structure gives you in your life, you can still like have a gratitude space for that, and also strive to have a recognition of that. I guess whether when you get that recognition, and I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Erin is going to get you to that position, and then what?
She doesn't do the work, just
No, but Erin
gives me the tools.
Yeah, so that's a similar way though that I can go and do a PhD at Lincoln College, but there's no way I'm going to probably get through the PhD as effectively, as smoothly, or as easily as if I went to a top university, because actually the people there have been there, done that, lived experience, and have adequate tools and skills to pass down to me to make that my journey smoother. Like, why would you make this more difficult? So in a similar way that Erin is going to pass all that knowledge and tools and things to you, when you reach that point, then what?
So I guess it just depends on life, I guess, at the time.
That is a very good answer, because I had a conversation.
Like, I'm not naive to the fact. Go on.
I had a conversation with someone that we know, and like in our client circle, and around sort of, we did the webinar around goal setting.
Yeah.
And as we broke down these barriers around goal setting and what it was, and actually the thing that they wanted to achieve, they weren't willing to put goals in place in order to achieve that big thing, because the fear that what would happen after that. Like, they've achieved that, so then what? And I was like, but you won't be the same person when you've achieved that as you are now, because you've worked differently, you've learned things along the way, you get more skills, you gain more knowledge, you put discipline in place, you become more consistent. So who you are as a person right this minute isn't going to be the same as when you reach that big goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can you make that judgment of what comes next? Because, you know, for me, I want to go into...
You don't know who you're going to be next year, do you?
Exactly. I don't. And I've said all along, for me and the competition and stuff, doing the transformation category, I don't know what will come after that yet. And that does fill me with fear, because I've always had a goal. But equally, if I can't stand being in prep, I'm not going to say I'm going to go into bodybuilding world. I quite enjoyed pulling the chalk. So I might go back to that. Like, I don't know yet. And you know, if I've settled and met someone, then doing bodybuilding is not ideal if you're going to start a family. Like, they won't even work succinctly. So do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about where my life's going to be. So what you're sort of saying is, I have this goal, and what happens after that is really flexible.
So yeah, and I think like Erin said to me, like, she was like, Alice, if I didn't think you were capable, I wouldn't tell, like, I wouldn't say, and I wouldn't push you, you know, and I wouldn't encourage you. But she was like, you need to have big goals. They need to scare you. Like, you just need to dream big. So there are like certain goals that kind of float around in my mind, but you know, it all just depends on how life maps out for me. And I think after I've competed next year, it will solidify what direction I'm going to take. It's like I have options. So
and that is a good way to
that
be.
feels nice.
If
Yeah,
you're
it feels
all in
nice.
one basket, how restrictive does that feel? And if you feel like you can't, you know, what we're sort of getting at with this person was the barrier that if I don't try, I can never fail. So having to sit with that feeling of not being good enough, the feeling of failure, the feeling that, I guess, all those things that everybody ever said about me were true, sitting there,
oh my God,
is too painful to even try.
I've got a quote written down in my diary that I written here 2 days ago that I think would be really, really important right now. Where is it? Right, so there's this one here. It says taking no risks will end up being your biggest risk. You have to risk failure to succeed. You have to risk rejection to be accepted. And then it says you have to risk heartbreak to love. If you're always avoiding risk, you're risking missing out on life. And that was Stephen Bartlett. Fucking fantastic. So I read that and I wrote that down the other day. I was like, yeah.
With like the failure thing, and obviously, you know, you have been into prep previously and it wasn't the most optimal prep or ideal prep, and actually how that negatively impacted your mental health. That's a lot of concerns people have in the bodybuilding world, like from the outside, people, the mental health aspect of people that yo-yo diet and bodybuilding the phases of bodybuilding, actually the mental health sides are very similar. How you view your relationship with food, how you view your relationship with yourself, that body dysmorphia, there's loads of elements in what happens in sort of prep, as well as taking your body to the extreme and having to utilize this energy just to function, and it lacks the energy in places where you might need it. So actually your cognitive ability to hold a conversation, to create space or emotional capacity, like your brain doesn't have that, because it's literally just trying to keep your heart beating and your lungs, like your lungs breathing. Do you know what I mean?
But it's like, the thing is, so essentially it's to do with like survival, and like, you know, we're animals and all of that. So our bodies are used to carrying a certain amount of fat, and this then bleeds into like your general kind of body fat, like lifestyle changes. Once your body starts losing a certain amount of fat, it's like, I don't like this, I don't like this. It does actually cue your brain to kind of release some sort of hormone to kind of make you want to eat more. And
that
I think
is my
that's
life. That is my
and that's why and that's why when we are in like dieting phases, we do kind of hit that point where we're like, fucking hell, like I could eat that whole tub of peanut butter. Like, it's just because your body is like almost becoming vulnerable, that it's not going to be able to survive. So then, like, when you talk about prep, like when you get to a certain point in prep, it's like, right, okay, what functions can we shut down in the body to be able to place that energy to like actually live, to continue living and fight for survival? Like, it sounds really, really harsh, but this is a thing, like prep isn't sustainable, and that is why you do it for, I say, such a short period of time, because in hindsight it is, but like realistically you shouldn't prep like year on year. You need time to recover from that, because it takes a huge fucking toll on the body. And like, it's true what they say. I didn't believe it at the time, but actually after your show, so post show, is probably the hardest part of it all. And if you don't have the support, if you don't, like I say, if you don't have that support afterwards, it makes it even harder.
And you know that, given like your previous experience, and then, you know, I appreciate the preps are going to look different. Like your prep this time will look different to what it did last time.
Prep
But
will be different.
in terms of your perfectionist outlook, let's go back to that, because I'm saying that because there'll be so many people who can resonate with that feeling of perfectionism, and a lot of people actually won't even strive to reach their goal because they feel bound by their perfectionism. It's actually like a constrictive trait, that because you feel like you can't, like, that it's just unrealistic, you don't even try. So that's why I keep coming back to it. But in terms of, if you get, when you decide to do like the next prep and competing, and you're on that stage and you don't get that placing or that status that you're hoping, it would be, you know, it would be a hope, although it might not be an expectation, there would be a hope that that would happen. What would it be like for you then, if you've already experienced a bad aftermath of prep, to then not reach that expectation that you're hoping for?
The thing is, like, I've spoken to you before about my experience last year with like the 2 shows that I did, and like my mindset. So the first show, well, to be honest, I didn't even think I was ready for stepping on stage last year. I didn't think I had the muscle maturity. I didn't think I had the density. You know, I spent 14 months in a gaining phase, just pushing food. Like, I'm 4'11", and my food was just under 5,000 calories a day. Like, I got fat. Like, I got fat. Like, I didn't need that much food. Like, I really did not need that much food. And like, there were no kind of like pullbacks during that time either to like manage body composition.
That's a lot of food. What did you eat?
Yes. So do you know you can get the freezer bags of sweet potato fries?
Yeah.
I would have a whole bag of them for my lunch.
You must have just been so full all the time.
It was horrible. I couldn't wear trousers. Like, it was just, and when I say to people, like I was on a consult call last night, I was saying, I have been to both spectrums. I've been to the point where I've been so big that I feel uncomfortable. Like I was limited to what I could wear, what I could do. You know, I could barely do 5,000 steps a day because I was walking down the street. But because I was that heavy, my legs, like my shins and my calves would just cramp. And it was
so
agony.
what people would look at you and think, like, so I said this, your definition of what your fat would be and my definition of what your fat would be isn't the same. However, you experience the feelings that someone overweight and carrying excess weight would feel. Like, it's not necessarily how you look, it's how you feel.
Yeah, well, there's that, but there's also, for my build, for my height, I was overweight. I was massively. And it, you know, it made life very difficult, like so difficult. So I understand that and I appreciate that. It's almost, and then like you could even say when I was in prep, or even just before I started with my previous coach, Jesus, was this just before lockdown? It might have been during lockdown. I was like, I just saw something online and I was like, I want abs. So what did I do? Restrict myself. I literally put everything in my fitness pal and I was so panicky with what I was doing. I was running all the time. I was like exercising. I just wanted to get as thin as possible. And then when I got there, I was scared to eat anything because I was like, if I eat something, I'm just going to blow up. So, but then I remember I was laid in bed once and like Ross would cuddle me and I could feel like, really, really feel like my hip bones. And I thought, this can't be nice to like cuddle and stuff. Like I was really, really thin, but it was like, I was scared to eat anything. It was a really weird time.
So
So yeah, I've been
gone
to
through
like
that battle with food and stuff then.
Yeah. So I'd been to both spectrums. I kind of understand it on both sides. Where were we going with this? I feel like I've lost my conversation.
So in the prep aspect, you were saying that you had like 5,000 calories.
Oh yeah. So like to prep, you need to be at an optimal body fat. You need to have an optimal body composition. Like ideally, I'm pretty sure it's like 20 to 23% body fat. I was way over that, which meant I wasn't going into prep like in the most best place. So it made prep so much harder. And that's why I always say to people now, look into your coaches, because I had a conversation with somebody last weekend who had said that they knew somebody who was on stage with my previous coach and was like, he shouldn't be a coach. So
I think it's just difficult that
very
from both of our experiences that life evolves and naturally the fitness industry evolves.
People move on.
Science has evolved, how people prep, how people lose body fat, how all these things happen. Like back in the day in bodybuilding world, there would have been a big guy in the gym and you'd walk in and you'd go, I want to be bigger than that guy. And then you work up, your competition was all you saw around you. There wasn't social media when bodybuilding began. There wasn't this like outlet. Maybe you'd have like a newspaper or magazine of bodybuilding, but actually how you prepped and how you worked was just what they knew at the time. Whereas now there's so much information about hormones, about sort of like your literal body composition. There's an abundance of information around fatigue, isn't there, about how your body fatigues and actually what's optimal cardio, how many times you should strength train. In your peak week, you don't do anything, do you? You just rest. Whereas I bet back in the day they were still pumping iron up until the minute they were on the stage, like how things progress. And sometimes coaches can be in a one way of working. And
that's the thing. If it worked for them back then and they got results, why would they bother researching and re-educating themselves? Because it's almost like I don't know if the word stigma is the right word. It's probably not, but it's almost like stubbornness of like, oh well, what I do works, so
Yeah, and it
You know,
probably
why
does
should
work. And
that?
it's the arrogancy, I guess, the arrogancy of feeling like, well, my way works and that's the best way. But actually, if you step outside of your current dynamic, is the way to improve. And, you know, that's what I value in people, not even just necessarily professionals, but in friends, is people that are open and willing to new conversations around
Yeah.
how I can improve, how they can improve. And we're constantly striving to be better people. Whereas if you've got someone that is really restrictive and think that their way is the best way and it's the only way, then actually that's not like achieving a lot, you know. Like I explained to my friend who's on a current photo shoot prep yesterday about, not yesterday, day before, she's been really poorly this week, to the point where she got sent home from work because she's just wiped. And I was like, you know, sometimes when people are like prepping for the photo shoots, you do have like deload weeks because your body gets knackered and it needs time to recover. And she was like, no, what's
That's
deload?
what I didn't get during my prep either.
She was like, no,
Doesn't know what deload is.
what's a deload? And then I explained to her what one was. But bear in mind, like how I prepped for my photo shoot was carb cycling. I understood more around the macros and nutrition. My calories varied and changed. Her photo shoot is in 2 weeks. Nothing apart from her cardio has changed from the whole 12 weeks.
So, like, food wise,
she's on the same calories now as she was at the start and has been the whole time she has been with the personal trainer. So she's been with them for like 2
I bet
years.
her fatigue and inflammation is going to be like through the roof. No wonder she feels like shit.
So
wow.
That's what I mean around
thing is,
worked once. And you know, I've said to you before, well, why can't I just go on a 1500 calorie deficit, 1500 calorie now and just stay in a deficit? And you were like, well, no. And I was like, but you said that's not optimal for a long period of time. And I was like, but I just did that for like 12 months. Like, what's the problem now?
Yeah.
No. It's difficult. They're so difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, because you just think, oh, fuck it. I'll just like people say to me, oh, yeah, I'm on like 1200 calories. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, but are you really though? Because, you know, people say, oh, yeah, you know, I'm on this 1200 calorie diet, but then they're actually like snacking and this and that. And you're like, you're not really on a 1200 calorie deficit. If you were, you'd be fucking skin and bone through the floor. Like, it's not okay. And there's a time and a place.
One thing that you know, you opened up, was it last week or the week before, to me about that I think it's really important for people to know as well.
Is this my breakdown, or is it my breakdown?
Well, there's two aspects of this. So during your prep, oh my god, you actually felt the guilt you felt for eating the fucking custard cream, like and how that projected in the voice notes, and actually how much you beated yourself up.
I don't even remember. Like, I literally don't really
my
remember.
god, yeah, you were just like, it was like 2 days after you'd eaten the custard cream, so you must have been maybe like
I remember like
4
actually
to 6 weeks out, were you?
I don't know, because it was before my first show, and it was like my first, well, my only slip up of, it's not even a slip up, it's a fucking custard cream. But
you
at the time,
you
like
felt
the end of the world.
Yeah,
it was the end of the world. The thing is with it though, and you can even apply this to like your general lifestyle diets. You know, if you've been put on a diet for whatever reason, it's because you're carrying too much fat. Anyway, different story. The longer you can keep away from the sugars, the naughty stuff. I say it's naughty stuff, it's not really naughty stuff, but it kind of is, kind of isn't. Like, if you feed yourself that small amount, it's going to trigger your mind, and you're just going to keep wanting, like, you're going to want it more than before. So I think that's why I was building myself up, and I was like, oh shit, you know, I've dabbled in it now, it's just going to make me want it 5 times as much.
And then you also had
had it for so long.
I mean, that was like your only slip up, and in terms of, like, we say slip up loosely, like it was a custard cream. But
yeah, it's not like the end of the world.
The off-plan thing that you had, and I wanted that to come through, because even people on prep are human. Like, it doesn't mean that them temptations that, you know, lifestyle people face aren't there. It's just having that discipline to say no. And sometimes that's lacked. Sometimes that's okay. You know, that one custard cream, you lack the discipline for that split second. And also in prep, you know, you battled as well with the peas. Do you remember the peas? And you were like, oh my God, there's all these calories in peas. I've been an extra session of cardio a week was absolutely wasted because I've been eating fucking peas.
That was my coach saying to me, because I put up a picture of my meal, and like peas were like my only source of veg. And I was having them in every meal, because bearing in mind I had all my carbs and all my fats taken out at 12 weeks out. That's 3 months before my show, by the way, guys. Which is like totally not okay, but anyway. So yeah, that was like my only kind of source of veg. And my coach had messaged me and was like, you can't have peas. Like, no. And then he broke it down. He was like, right, so there's like what, 40 calories in a portion of peas or whatever. It was like, if you're having that like however many times a day for a week, that you're essentially doing an hour's worth of cardio for nothing. So I was like, shit.
And that's where that unhealthy relationship with food comes from.
Yeah.
And then feeling like you have to then up your cardio or do something in order to play catch up, and that's like a dangerous game. I know the bit about the vulnerable part is after your prep. Do you want to sort of talk to people about, you know, you'd had that really hard time, it had been really difficult, you got on stage, and you had said all along that you just wanted to do that one show unless you got like an invite, and then it just so happened that you got the invite, and then
So
like
the
4
thing
weeks.
is, yeah, so the first, I think it was like, I think I was 6 weeks out from my first show. And my coach had rang me and was like, you're not going to be ready for that first show. We need more time. And I was like, fucking hell, I'm like through the floor already. I was like, I want to do that first show. Like, I've got my heart set on that show. My family are coming, my clients are coming, like things are booked for that show. You told me we were doing that show. You created the timeline. I should have been ready. I should have been ready weeks ago. Because ideally for a show, you want to be ready a good like 3 to 4 weeks out, because then you can reverse and actually be fed into the show rather than chasing your tail the whole fucking way. But he was like, right, we'll do that first show, but then we'll do another one 2 weeks later. So that first show, we won't peak you for it. We'll just run through it. It'll just be like a walkthrough, get the experience, go away for 2 weeks, and then the show after that will be like your main show. So you'll have like a full peak and everything. I was like, right, okay, whatever. I spoke to Ross a little bit more about it, and the closer I got to that first show, obviously I was feeling worse and worse and worse, because it was just a case of digging constantly. And I was just, this anxiety was building up in me, because in my mind I was like, I'm going to need to keep doing this for X amount of weeks when I just want to do this one show. Like, I know I've not got the muscle there. Like, I was like, do you know what I mean? So I think it must have been on the Tuesday, because I came down to Lincoln. I think it was peak week. Yeah. And I said it to Ross. I was like, I'm just going to say it. I was just like, I'm literally like, I'm the client. It's my decision. I was like, I don't want to do another show. I literally just want to do this show. I want to go in, I want to enjoy it, and then I want to come away. Like, I was ready for that. I was ready to do that show and go away and just work on growing. It was like, right, fine, okay, whatever kind of thing. So we didn't really do like a proper peak for it. It was a case of 2 days, I think, before my first show, where I got a little bit of carbs, wasn't a lot. And then the night before, I got 2 glasses of wine, and I got some salty chips from McDonald's, and 2 chicken burgers. But I only ate the actual burger. I didn't eat the bun, because I'm not really a bread fan, to be honest. So did that, and that was just going to help kind of like bring the vascularity out, fill me up a little bit, because I was so flat and so depleted. Like it was just like there was nothing. So I needed that kind of like plump. I needed my glycogen stores to be restored. I needed that fullness in the muscles. It was essentially your muscles kind of suck in the carbs, which make you look fuller. But then you also need to be careful that you don't overfeed to the point where it kind of like spills. And that's when you get that like watery film and you're not looking like hard and shredded. So yeah, we did that. And then, do you know what? I felt amazing because I was like, show day's here, I can enjoy it. But it's really, really funny because on show morning, I was up, I got my makeup done at 5. So I was up at like 4. I remember looking at myself in the bathroom and I was like, wow. I was like, did not expect to look like this. So I messaged my coach and I was like, what am I eating today? And it was a case of just trickling in these, like, it was just like boiled potato and turkey. But I was like, I remember just being laid on the bed and I was like, I'm scared to eat because of how I was looking. I was like, fucking hell, what if I eat something and I just blow up and like everything's ruined? Like I was genuinely so scared to eat anything or even just drink. So I was like sipping on water and I remember just being like laid on the bed, nibbling on this food. And then once I'd finished the food, I would get up and like look at myself and I'd be like, oh my God, like the veins in my abs were just like, it was incredible to see. But I was really, really nervous because I'd never done it before. I didn't know what to expect. In my mind, I was very much like, I don't deserve to be here. Because in my mind, I didn't like the whole perfectionist thing. Like, I knew I didn't have that package that I wanted for my first show. And then in the back of my mind, I was always thinking like, well, if I wasn't good enough, then my coach wanted to put me on stage and this and that. Obviously, yeah, that's a different topic. But yeah, so it was show day, got on stage. It was just me and this other girl. I remember talking to her like at the side bit just before we went on, and I was looking at her and I was like, she's better than me. You know, she's done, I think she did like 6 more shows before that one. And obviously this one was my first one. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, what if I fall over? What if I forget my routine? Like, what if I sweat and my tan starts to drip? Like I was shitting it. But literally, as soon as I stepped on stage, it was like something clicked. And I was like, oh my God. Like the feeling was incredible. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't shaky. Like posing in front of my old coach, I was like a wreck. But when I was actually on stage, there was no fear. There was nothing. I always say this, like, it felt like home. It's a really weird sensation, but I really enjoyed it. And that buzz of being on stage and everything, it was really nice. And then came off and I was like, I just want to get back on. Like, I just want to get back on there. It was really weird. Something really nice about showcasing your hard work, people seeing that it is possible to like push yourself to, you know, places you've never been. So came off and then I had to go back on, and then I'd won out of me and the other girl, which I thought was mental. But that feeling was just like, oh my God. And I think because obviously I could hear everybody in the crowd and I was like, oh my God, like this is actually amazing. And like, you know, I've made people proud, I've made myself proud, and like all of those doubts that I had about my capabilities had just gone. And I was like, I literally felt like I was like, I could conquer the world. Like there is nothing I cannot do. So I genuinely, yeah. And then so came off, and obviously Ross had come rushing and he was like crying, he was so happy, and I was like, oh my God, it was just such an incredible experience. So sat down, caught with my coach, and he was like, you do realize that this means, you know, you need to do the Arnold's now. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah. And I was like, you think? Bearing in mind I was like half a bottle of wine in, I'd had 4 square bars, was buzzing, and I was like, do you think I could get leaner? Because obviously I wasn't as lean as what I should have been for that show. Like my upper was there, but my lower was just not there. And he was like, yeah, he was like, we've got 4 weeks. I was like, 4 weeks. So I had to prep for another 4 weeks.
I remember sitting with you after you'd won, and I said, well, you might as well go for it now. Like you're halfway there,
Yeah,
and you're
Ross
like,
was saying
well,
to
I'm
me,
not
like,
halfway there. And I remember you saying that, I'm not halfway there. And I was like, you are, you've just put all that effort in for all those weeks. Like, you know, out of perspectively, you've just spent 20 weeks in prep and now you're going to have 4 weeks
yeah.
more. Actually, what
This
is
is,
that in perspective?
yeah, but this is the thing, people are like, oh, it's only 4 weeks. And then Ross was like, it would be an incredible experience. Like it would be, incredible. And like my old coach was like, to say that you've been on the Arnold stage in your first season, you know. But like referring back to my expectations of me, I felt like I didn't want to do anything like that until I was at a point where I was almost confident with the package that I was showcasing.
I'm worthy of being there, I guess.
Yeah, because in the end of the day, the Arnold's is one of the biggest stages in the world. So I was like, bugger it. I was like, what? Because he was like, what have you got to lose? And at the time, I was like, I'm on cloud 9 right now. Like I could conquer the world. I was like, fuck it, I can do another 4 weeks. Because when you think about it in hindsight, it's like it's technically only 3 weeks if I'm going to be doing like a proper peak. Because you take out that last week to kind of like refeed and things like that. So I was like, 3 weeks, I can do that. I can manage that.
And you also had
So,
like the evening of your show and the next day you were allowed off planned meals, weren't you?
well, he said to me that I could have a controlled off-plan meal. So I wasn't allowed any desserts or anything like sugary or anything like that. I did say I was having some Oreos and I did have that. I think I only had like 4 Oreos. I had a couple of squashies, and I think I had a cookie, but that
I
was
think you
it.
had a cookie. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't stomach anything else. And then we went to Zizi's that night. Well, we literally got back, got changed, and then went out to Zizi's. I had the breaded chicken with sweet potato fries, and we did get the like cheesy garlic bread with balsamic onions on, arancini balls, and I was like, I had 1 arancini ball, slice of garlic bread pizza, and that was like this big, a couple of chips, a quarter of my chicken. And I was like, I want to go back. Like, I just did not want to be there. I was like, I am absolutely fucked. I was like, my belly was like hurting. It felt like I had some sort of vice around me. It felt like it was just being like squeezed so hard. It was like out here, I was in so much pain. I was tired. I was like, I just want to go back to the hotel and lay in bed. I'd even got myself a glass of wine that I didn't even touch. So it was wasted. It really was wasted. So we
That's the
got back to
hype, that's the expectation, isn't it? Everybody always posts after their shows them eating something really sugary and then them going out for a big burger or a pizza the evening of the show as if they've just sat and scoffed the whole thing.
no, it doesn't happen. I literally don't know anybody that's been able to do that.
But that's
Like,
what social media will have you
yeah,
believe.
yeah. So got back to the hotel. We laid on the bed, and I literally just fell asleep straight away. Woke up the next day because he'd said to me I was allowed that off-plan meal, but it had to be controlled. But the next day had to be like back on. I didn't fully go back on. I did have some oats and like had a banana in my oats because I've not had a banana for like 4 months. And I just craved that. I just craved fruit because I wasn't allowed fruit. I wasn't allowed veg. Even salad got taken out, a few weeks before my show. So I actually craved all of that stuff. Didn't did that, and then was it the trying to think what day, because this then leads to that meltdown. So we must have come back on the snow. It would have been the Monday, because on the Tuesday or the Wednesday I was out getting my steps. I literally remember it like it was yesterday, and I was walking down the street, the sun was out, and I just started crying. I was crying and crying and crying, and I was like, fuck it. I walked to the co-op. I bought a bag of those mini flapjack bites. I bought a bag of cookies, and I sat by the sea crying, eating them. And then I would look at the back and look at all the calories that I just consumed and think, I can't eat anything else today. Like, I literally can't. I've absolutely fucked it. And I just remember crying. I messaged Ross and I was like, I've just done this. I feel like shit. Like, I've ruined everything. Because in my mind, I was like back at that point where I was like, I need to live like this, suffering for the next 3 weeks. And like, for me, that just felt like the end of the world. Pretty much every other day I said to Ross, I was like, I want to give up. I want to give up. I was so unwell, like mentally. I had nothing. Like, I literally had nothing. I was doing 75 minutes of cardio every day. I was doing, like, how many steps? My steps weren't that high, to be honest. They were like 13,000. Food was at like 600 calories. No carbs, just protein. No flavouring. Salt got taken out in the last week and a half as well. So there was no flavouring, no nothing. I was on 8 litres of water a day. And it was just it was just excessive, and it was grinding me like every single day. Grind. And I would overanalyze how I was looking. I would take photos of myself like 3 times a day. I would weigh myself throughout the day, because I would think, right, okay, if my weight's going down now, then it means tomorrow it's going to drop again, because he had drilled it in me that if my weight weren't moving, I wasn't making progress. Right. Which is so wrong, obviously. But I fixated on the scales massively, but it doesn't mean shit. It really doesn't. So yeah, those 4 weeks were very hard. There were so many times I would like go into the cupboard and just open the jar of peanut butter just to smell it, and then I'd put it back. And there was actually one time as well where I'd put a Reese's cup in my mouth. I chewed it up and spat it back out.
They call that something, don't they?
They do.
Call it is it carb spitting or?
Oh no, I thought it was some sort of like disorder.
Well, it is a disorder, but that's what this part of I guess it's part of bulimia. And that when they want to eat carbs, they generally put the carb in their mouth, they spit it round, and then they'll spit it out.
Yeah. So I did that once. I was just away, and like every single day, I was just like a cabbage. I felt nothing. Like, Ross thought I was gonna leave him. Like, I was just like hormonally, I was just like gone, just on a different planet. But the thing is, my thyroid had crashed. Essentially I was being pushed to the point where it was almost like my coach wanted like my estrogen and female mechanisms, so to say, to shut down, to make the process easier, which is totally not the right way to do it.
You obviously had that horrendous few weeks, and then what was it like coming up to the Arnolds?
So it got to the point where, so I went down to Lincoln, I think it was like 11 days before my show. I think, do you know what I needed? Like, because there was one, was it his other client had done the same first show as me, and she was also going to do the Arnolds, and she needed help with posing. So we'd arranged it that I would come down a little bit earlier to help her with her posing. And then obviously I would be closer to my coach so he could monitor how I was looking and things like that every single day. But then I can't remember what day I went down. It was like 2 days after I'd found out that, well, my coach said, oh, she's actually dropped out. She's not doing it. She's fucked. And
What,
I
the
was
other
like,
girl?
yeah. She dropped out. She was like, no, I'm not doing it. So she'd obviously lost some
2
money on.
days?
So no. So I was in Lincoln for like 2 days because I was meant to
Ah,
be helping her with a posing. Um, and then he'd said that, oh, she's not doing it. She's dropped out.
when did she drop out?
It would have been like it would have been just under a week out, I think.
God almighty,
Um,
that's a hard decision to make though.
yeah, but then she'd cancelled a gym membership and everything. Like she just went
She crashed.
yeah. So yeah, that was that. And then like each day it was really weird because obviously me and Ross were just like drifting apart because I was like a cabbage. I had no feelings, no emotion. Like normally I'm quite an affectionate person. So for Ross to see me not be like that is alarming massively. Because if it was the other way around, then I would have absolutely been the same. But I just had no feelings. I was like, I genuinely didn't, like, my mind was just not mine. It was really bizarre. So yeah, well, obviously you could say that my hormones weren't where they should be. I wasn't at a physiological range. It just wasn't optimal at all. So yeah, anyway, leading up to the show, I became obsessed with buying like sweets and anything like that I wasn't allowed
I
for.
remember that bit, and you were saying, I actually distinctly remember saying, Alice, you're never going to fucking eat all that. Like, because I can't remember what it was, but
I wonder if I can find the photo because we'll have to put it
you
in
had,
here
you
so
got
people
like
can see what I
loads.
bought.
You sent me a video and you was like, so I've got this and I've got these and I've got that. And I was like, what
Yeah,
the fucking hell are you going to do with all that? Like, there was so much.
I was obsessed. Like there is a thing, like when you're in prep, there is a thing called prep spending, and like Ross has been through it. It's where you get so fixated on, it's almost like, I don't even know if it's filling a void, because it might possibly be, where you just want to buy, like you just become obsessed. But I was the same. Like the routine in Lincoln, because mum and dad live on, where mum and dad live. Every single morning I would get up, I would walk to Costa in St. Mark's. I would get a Costa, take my laptop, do like my check-ins and stuff, and then go into the toilet, take some selfies, walk into Primark, buy a load of shit that I don't need, go in the other shops, buy stuff I don't need. And then I would just fill up. I would stock up on all like my chocolates and sweets and pick a mix and everything every
Not
single
even.
day. Like I literally had to do that every single day. And there was one, so I'll come back to that in a second. And there was this one occasion because Ross then flew down. No, he drove down, sorry. He drove down, like, I want to say it was on the Wednesday. Yeah, the Wednesday. So I was only in Lincoln on my own for a couple of days, and then he came down and joined us. He came down, and then I was like obsessed. Do you remember when we were kids, the fun gums in the 10p packets, the little toothbrush,
Yeah.
the toothbrushes and teeth? You used to get them in a little packet do you remember Oasis? I think Oasis is still there. Yeah, they used to sell them for 10p a packet, and I could not find them anywhere. I was obsessed. So we probably spent about 4 hours driving around like Lincoln and going to different shops to try and find these sweets. I would not give up.
I wonder if there's something in them. This might be completely unrelated, but when my stepbrother was on heroin, we knew he'd had heroin because he'd eat fun gums. I don't know, maybe there's something in it that makes us crave it. I have no idea, but it's bizarre that that was the very thing that it was a
Really
dairy
weird, isn't
milk,
it?
you know, the dairy milk yogurts with the buttons one side and the dairy milk the other.
Yeah.
It would be one of them and Fun Gums, and that's how you'd know that he'd scored.
Oh.
How bizarre. Anyway, yeah, you went 4 hours round Lincoln.
But yeah, so we were like hunting, but in between, so we'd come back to mum and dad's. I'd open my laptop and try and find them online. Couldn't find them. About, oh, what about so and so shop? So we'd go back out, we'd drive up to like Ermine and try the shops up there. And in the end, I was like, I'll just order them. So got back, had them in my basket. I never actually ever ordered them. And then it just got closer and closer. And then we went down to the Arnolds. We'd registered. And I remember her name's Hannah. She's like the girl, the girl who gave me the trophy award medal thing.
One that does the podcast.
Huh?
She does her own podcast, doesn't she?
Yeah. She was like, oh my God, like, where have you gone? Like, cause obviously I was a lot more gaunt this time round. And I just remember like Ross was like, oh, do you want a picture? Like in my mind, it wasn't there to ask Ross to take a photo of me, like by the Two Bros thing. It was just like I was on a different planet. It was really, really weird. Because normally, like when you're doing something exciting like that, you're like, oh, take a photo with me, or let's get a photo together, kind of thing. But I was like, he was like, oh, do you want a photo? And I was like, yeah, can do. So he took a photo, and then we were walking off, and Ross was like, I can't believe we didn't get one together. He was like, I can't believe you didn't ask for one. I was like, well, it literally didn't cross my mind, whereas normally it would have done. And I was like, well, do you want to go back and get one? And he was like, no. I was like, right, okay, that's that. And then we're heading over to the hotel, and my coach was like, oh, have something off plan like night before. So I just literally had the same as what I had for my first show, because I thought it worked last time. It didn't make me feel like shit or anything. So did that. I remember we were actually sat on the bed, and we just put on that Jeffrey Dahmer documentary at the time. I'd had 2 glasses of wine, and I was like, I want more. I just want. It was like a flick, like a switch had like flicked. I was like, I want to sabotage. It was really weird, and I thought, fuck it. Like I knew by having more wine, it was going to make me feel like shit, but I didn't. I then went into the bag and had a cookie. And Ross was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just having a cookie. It's fine. So that was that. Then we went to sleep. And then I was up at 3. So I probably only got like 5 hours sleep. Maybe not even that, to be honest. Up at 3. Oh no, it would have been earlier than that. Because my appointment was 3:30. And it took me for my makeup. And it would have taken 20 minutes, so it would have been 2:30. I remember waking up and I was like, I feel awful. I feel horrendous. I remember just being sat on the floor, and I was like, oh my God, I hate my life right now. So went off, got my makeup done. I remember just being sat there. Do you know when you just get really, really hot? And you can feel like
does that to me.
Yeah. And you can feel like your heart kind of like pounded, and I was like, I'm gonna be sick. And she was like, are you okay? I was like, no. So I ran into the toilet, and I was sick. Felt like my arse was gonna explode. Arse issues. We did it. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Went and sat back down, finished my makeup off, and then drove back. And then I just kind of up a little bit. I think just from being sick, you would have thought being sick would help to a certain degree, but if anything, I felt like I just kind of got that watery film. It was like I wasn't as shredded or as tight as what I was for my first show. So I was looking at myself and I was like, oh, I look like shit. And it was just playing in my mind. I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Like I wasn't as excited for the process as what I was for the first one. And it was just like mentally and hormonally, like I just wasn't very well. So yeah, we went down, and I just felt quite reserved. Didn't really speak much. I had to go in and get my top coat. Ross couldn't come in, or my mum and dad. My dad couldn't come in until a certain time. I think it was like 11. But I had to be there like an hour before to get my top coat. So I went in and did that. And then I was like pondering around on my own for a little bit. And I was like, what do I do? So I went in to walk into the toilets, and I saw like all the girls I was going to be up against. And I was like, and the doubts were just like trickling in. And I was like, oh, I don't deserve to be here. Because when you're in the spray tanning booths, it's just like a room, and you literally see everybody. Like, you are facing everyone. So you see
Hits and nunnies everywhere, is it?
you see exactly who you're going up against on stage. You see it. Like the first time it didn't bother me at all. But the second time I was like, it really got to me, and I just thought, I don't deserve to be here. So I had that mindset anyway, and I was just trying to just get on. Went into the toilets, sat down, and then I had my little bottle of red wine in my case. So I took that out, just sat on the toilet drinking my wine. I was like, fuck it. Like, we're here now. And then I ended up getting like a mark on my tan. So I had to go back and get my tan redone on my leg. Came out, Ross came to meet me, and it got to a point where I was like, I had to go backstage. So went backstage, and the vibe was just cold. Like, for the first show, backstage was just incredible. All the girls were like together, we were talking, having a laugh. The vibe was just very nice, very relaxing, very soothing. But the vibe for this one was just cold. Everybody was like in their own little space. No one was talking. So I was like, God, where do I sit, kind of thing. So I went and sat down. I was just like sat there on my own, getting like my little square bars out to carb up before going on. And then the guy came over to me, and he was like, you're going on first. I was like, yeah, of course I am. Fucking course I am. So that was it. I had a big bottle of rosé in my case. I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So I opened the rosé, had a glass, and then this other girl came up to me and was chatting to me. She was like, can I have some of that? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So she then took the bottle, and we like drank out the bottle. And then we just got chatting, and then things did start to like ease. People then started to talk, and then I looked over in the corner and saw another girl chugging this huge bottle of wine in the corner, and I was like, right, okay, do you know what, we're here now. This is the end. This is like the last of it all. This is the end of the suffering. It's only up from here. So I was like, just be me, laughy and jokey, trying to get people together and just enjoy it and have a bit of fun. Got on stage, and I was like, I don't know what you would call it, but it was obviously, I was like weighing, what's the word? When you're like, not weighing yourself up against other people. Is that the word?
Yeah. Well, you're weighing yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like comparing
So
yourself to everybody else.
Yeah, and it's
sizing yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah, and in my mind, I was like, well, roughly what, like, where do I think I'm going to place, kind of thing. Because I think in my first show, obviously, I'd won against that other girl, so it was almost like my standards were
a bit higher than you were previously.
Yeah, and that I might actually do better than I think here. So then I was in the beginners class, which was like really big. It was a huge lineup. And I was right at the end, I didn't even get anywhere to the middle, where if you're in the middle, you're gonna win. Right at the end, obviously didn't even get top 3 or 4 in that. So that was a knock. And I was like, right, okay, height class is next. It's only me and 2 other girls. And then the first girl, who was fucking irritating backstage, so many girls that I know of this person, and she's like, They're like, she is a fucking nightmare backstage. Anyway, she went on before me, and I personally think that she didn't look to where, like, didn't look as, I don't want to say as good as me, but I felt like my physique, my package trumped hers. Anyway, she stepped on stage and probably she was stumbling all over the place. She looked nervous. She was quite wobbly in certain places. And in my mind, I was like, I definitely feel like I got second here, because the other girl, Cassie, was just incredible. She won, rightly so. I actually still speak to her now, to be fair. So, and then I went on, I did my routine. I was really, really confident, walked over to the sideline to the other girl, and she was like, oh, you did amazing. You look so good. And that kind of gave me a bit of a boost. So that was that. And then obviously Cassie did hers, and then we were on the side. And then I think we had to go off. I can't really remember. But anyway, when it came to the awards, we were on stage, and in my mind I was like, I'm second. And to me, that was fine. I would have been happy with second. Like, I felt like I deserved second. And then obviously they go third, second, first, and then obviously third medal. I got called out, and I was like, it was almost like everything had just gone in my body. And I just remember being on the sideline. I was like, I am literally being placed last out of these three. Like,
I know, like, I know definitely that had like such a profound impact then, didn't it, moving forward? And I think,
yeah,
I'm really like conscious of the time of the podcast, so I think it'd be really, really
oh,
good.
how long have we been on
Like,
for?
I think you've like shared so much and so much insight as to like who you are and how that, why you're coaching and all these things. Like, I just want to say thank you for being that vulnerable, because you have shared like a lot of vulnerable experiences. And
Yeah,
I think I want to do like a part 2 from that place, from all those sort of negative experiences and how you've managed to pick yourself back up. So I want to really hone in on what it is that's pulled you back. I'm just conscious that could be at least like another hour. So yeah,
he was going to say this should only be like 40 minutes, but
we'll pop a pin in it now, and then we'll do part 2 for next week about how you got from that place of being second, being third when you wanted to play second, and how you've pulled yourself back round.
Yeah, because it was literally just a nosedive for a good 3 or 4 months. So
I think it's really worth exploring as well the after effects of prep. So
we can talk about that and how that kind of like affects life and things like that. So
well, grand, because we could touch as well on your engagement. I was just going to think as well, what you said about Ross, about the picture thing. I remember after you'd finished the Arnold, we were having those photos, weren't we? And I said I got one with Ross, and the situation was so awkward between you and Ross. Like, and then I was like, oh, this is weird. But that obviously was why.
Yeah, because Ross had said to me, because obviously in his mind, he thought I was leaving him because I was like so distant and so cabbage-like. It was like I had no emotion. I was nothing. I was a completely different person. And he'd said to me when I come off stage, he was like, I don't think I can prep with you again. So for me, that was like an ultimatum. So it wasn't. It massively affected our relationship, massively.
Like delve into all that, because people just don't understand. Like, they just see the person on the stage wearing the nice tan hair and makeup in a glamorous bikini. Like, the realities behind that are very different.
Because even like with Ross's now, I'm fully aware of the process, so I know what to look out for. I know I'm not gonna get worried about how he's acting and how differently he's acting, because it's just temporary, it's not real. But I've managed to like learn to kind of switch off, if that makes sense, and just think, right, okay, it's X amount of months, and then out of prep things will just go back to normal, and it's just part of the process.
Yeah, we'll
But
definitely
yeah, it's
definitely explore the after effects of prep, and thank you for sharing all that.
all right. I knew I would go off on like a million tangents, but
It's
just
been really, honestly really really insightful. So
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people have took value from that. So
I
yeah.
hope so. And it's not to say that every prep's like that, because it's not, and it
No, but it's
shouldn't be.
good to have an insight into you as well.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
you're human too. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, until next week then, guys.
Till next week.